Bryce Carter dominated Summit Ridge High until he crossed the wrong person. What unfolded next blindsided everyone. It began with a stare, not a fleeting glance, but one that stuck, heavy and unsettling, the kind that marks you as an outcast. 17-year-old Kayla Morgan had been in Summit Ridge, Idaho, for just 4 weeks. She already knew she didn't fit in. Her mom's job dragged them from town to town, and some places welcomed strangers while others made it clear they didn't. Summit Ridge High fell into the latter camp. Kayla moved through the corridors, her backpack hanging off one shoulder, dodging the sneers her mom had warned her about. Kids like Bryce Carter, who acted like they owned everything. The school, the town, the people. She'd hoped to slip under the radar. That lasted 3 days. By day 4, Bryce zeroed in on her. It started small, murmurs as she passed, his crew chuckling just loud enough to sting. Then came the taunts. They mocked her clothes, her quiet voice, the way she carried herself. Kayla brushed it off. She'd learned silence was her shield. But Bryce thrived on reactions, and her ignoring him only fueled his fire. One day in English class, as Mrs. Grayson lectured about To Kill a Mockingbird, a harsh whisper sliced through. "Hey, new girl." Kayla kept her eyes on her notes, pen digging into the paper. Bryce grinned, slouching back. "I'm talking to you, Morgan." She didn't budge. "It's just funny," he sneered, "how some people wander into places they don't belong." A few laughs rippled. Kayla's hand trembled, but she kept scribbling. "Lost, huh?" Bryce pressed, his tone mocking yet syrupy. "This school, these people, it's gotta feel so strange for you." Her stomach nodded, but she stayed silent. She'd vowed not to let jerks like him win. "Yo, Morgan, you deaf or what?" Bryce prodded, louder now. "Bryce," Mrs. Grayson snapped, her voice cutting like a blade. "Got something for the class?" He leaned back, hands up in fake innocence. "Nah, just saying hi to the newbie." Mrs. Grayson shot him a glare before resuming her lesson. Bryce flashed Kayla a smug look, settling into his seat. She exhaled softly, maybe he'd back off. Then a crumpled note hit her desk. She hesitated, unfolding it. "Leave town, freak." Her gut sank. She refolded it, hiding her reaction. Kayla stuffed the note in her bag, face blank as class droned on. But this was just the start. Bryce had no clue who her mom was, and he'd soon regret it. Things were about to escalate. Kayla had survived plenty, new towns, new schools, new bullies. She knew the type. If you don't bite back, they dig deeper. It was Friday, and the cafeteria buzzed, trays banging, voices echoing, the air thick with greasy burger smells. Kayla sat alone in a corner, headphones on, tuning out the chatter. Then she sensed him. Looking up, she saw Bryce looming nearby, hands in his varsity jacket, that cocky grin plastered on. His buddies, Jake, Ethan, and Tyler, hovered behind, eager for the show. She'd seen this script before. Bryce cocked his head. "Always solo, huh?" No response. "Gotta make friends sometime." He eyed her untouched food, then his crew. "Or maybe nobody wants you here." Jake snickered. Ethan chimed in. "She's gotta love the loner life." Bryce stepped closer. "Or she just doesn't fit." Kayla's fingers tightened beneath the table, but she stayed still. That irked him. In a flash, he snatched her tray and dumped it. The crash silenced the room, fries scattered, soda pooling on the floor. Gasps mixed with stifled laughs. Bryce's grin widened. Whoops. Kayla stared at the mess, heat rising in her chest, every eye on her. Would she snap? Cry? She stood slowly, grabbed a napkin, wiped her hands, and rose. She wouldn't feed his ego. But as she turned to leave, Bryce blocked her. "Where you off to?" "We're bonding here." Kayla inhaled deeply. "Move." The room froze. His grin twitched. "What did you say?" he asked, amused. She locked eyes with him. "Move." His crew laughed, Jake hooting. "She's got guts." Bryce closed the gap, towering over her. "Or what?" Kayla's pulse raced, hands twitching. "What's going on here?" a stern voice boomed. Ms. Harper, the assistant principal, marched over, heels clacking. Her gaze flicked from Kayla to Bryce, then the spilled mess. Bryce's smirk vanished. He stepped back, feigning innocence. "Nothing, Ms. Harper, just a slip-up." She wasn't buying it. "That true?" she asked Kayla. Kayla paused. Truth wouldn't matter. Guys like Bryce always dodged consequences. She'd seen it before. The crowd watched, silent. "Yeah," Kayla mumbled, "an accident." Bryce smirked. Ms. Harper sighed. "Clean it up." And that was that. His buddies chuckled as they strutted off, Bryce tossing over his shoulder. "Catch you Monday, Morgan." Kayla stared at the wreckage. Her mom always said to stand tall, but what good was it when no one cared? She grabbed her bag and left the cafeteria. This time, though, she wasn't letting it go. She'd had enough of swallowing it down. The house was dead quiet when Kayla got home. She kicked off her soda-stained shoes and dropped her bag. "Kayla, you there?" Her mom's voice called from the kitchen. Tara Morgan wasn't one to miss a thing. As Summit Ridge's new police chief, she'd spent years reading people, spotting what others overlooked. Kayla lingered before replying. "Yeah, it's me." She shuffled in. Tara, still in uniform, leaned on the counter, coffee in hand, her piercing green eyes studying her daughter. "You good?" Tara asked, voice steady. Kayla shrugged. "Yeah." Tara sipped her coffee, unconvinced. "How was school?" Kayla sank into a chair, tracing a nick in the table. "Fine. A beat." Tara set her mug down. "Try that again." Kayla sighed. She couldn't dodge her mom's radar. "Some guy trashed my lunch today," she admitted, voice low. Tara didn't flinch, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Who?" Kayla hesitated. Naming him might make it worse. She'd learned that lesson too many times. "Doesn't matter," she muttered. Tara's tone hardened. "It does." Kayla rubbed her hands together. "Bryce Carter." Tara's face shifted, recognition. "You know him?" Kayla asked, frowning. Tara exhaled sharply. "I know his folks." Kayla snorted. "Figures." Tara's fingers tapped the counter. "And the school? What did they do?" Kayla paused. "Nothing. Ms. Harper asked if it was an accident. I said yeah." Tara's brow furrowed. "Why?" Kayla looked up, frustration spilling out. "Because telling the truth changes nothing. Bryce wouldn't get touched. His family's probably connected." Tara leaned forward. "And what does that teach him?" "You." Kayla blinked, caught off guard. "When someone screws up," Tara said evenly, "and we let it slide, what's the takeaway?" Kayla had no answer. Tara sighed, shaking her head. "I get it, Kayla. You don't want trouble. But letting this go, that's how guys like him keep winning." Kayla's jaw tightened. She looked away, unsure if fighting back even mattered. Tara stayed quiet a moment, then rested a hand on Kayla's shoulder. "You're not alone in this." Kayla swallowed hard. She wanted to trust that, but doubt lingered. What she didn't know was Tara wasn't dropping this. Come Monday, Bryce Carter would face the consequences of picking the wrong target. The air felt off when Kayla stepped out of her mom's car that morning. Whispers hummed through the halls. People stared not with scorn, but something new, curiosity, tension. Something was up. She reached her locker when she heard it. "Dude, the police chief's here." Kayla's stomach lurched. She glanced toward the office. There stood Chief Tara Morgan, tall in her uniform, badge glinting under the lights, radiating authority. Even the staff seemed rattled. Kayla's heart pounded. "Oh crap," she whispered. Before she could think, the office door swung open. "Chief Morgan, this seems excessive," Principal Evans said, his voice tight. Kayla froze. Things were about to get real. Behind him trailed Ms. Harper and Bryce's parents. Kayla's breath caught. Greg and Sandra Carter oozed privilege, Greg in a sleek suit, Sandra clutching a pricey handbag. Bryce lingered nearby, his usual swagger swapped for bewilderment. He didn't get it yet. Tara's gaze pinned Principal Evans. "I'm here," she said coolly, "because my daughter was humiliated in your cafeteria, and your team did nothing." Ms. Harper coughed. "With respect, Chief," Tara cut her off. "No. You saw it. You let it slide." Greg Carter chuckled dryly. "Chief, come on, they're teenagers." "A mix-up." Tara turned, her voice low but lethal. "A mix-up? Your son targeted my kid, harassed her, shamed her in front of everyone." Sandra sighed loudly. "Kids do silly things, boys being boys." Tara didn't flinch. "That's the issue. You raise him like that, then act shocked when he thinks he's untouchable." Bryce shifted, looking smaller. Principal Evans forced a grin. "Let's not blow this up. We can sort it out." "No deals," Tara said, voice like iron. "Just accountability." The room went still. Kayla swallowed hard. She'd never seen her mom like this. Not just her mom, but Chief Morgan. Sandra glanced at Bryce. "Apologize." His jaw tightened. "Mom." "Now," she snapped. Bryce exhaled, facing Kayla, his confidence gone. "Sorry," he mumbled. Tara raised a brow. "Louder." His face flushed. "I'm sorry," he gritted out, eyes down. Kayla knew it was hollow, but for once, he wasn't calling the shots. "Dude, the police chief's here." Kayla's stomach dropped as she overheard the buzz near her locker. She peeked toward the office. Chief Tara Morgan stood tall, badge shining, exuding control. The air crackled with tension. Then the door burst open. "Chief Morgan, this is overkill," Principal Evans pleaded, his forced smile fading. Kayla froze. Ms. Harper trailed behind, flanked by Bryce's parents, Greg and Sandra Carter. Bryce slouched nearby, confusion replacing his usual cocky grin. Greg, all slick suit and arrogance, towered over the scene. Sandra gripped her designer bag like armor. Tara ignored them, locking eyes with Evans. "My daughter was humiliated in your cafeteria," she said, voice steady as stone. "And your staff let it happen." Ms. Harper stammered, "Chief, Tara cut in sharp. "No excuses. You witnessed it and pinned it on her." Greg laughed, short and dismissive. "They're kids, Chief. A little misunderstanding." Bryce shifted, eyes darting, still lost. Tara turned, her gaze slicing through Greg. "A misunderstanding? Your son singled her out, tormented her, shamed her in front of the school." Sandra huffed, exasperated. "We get calls about petty stuff like this all the time. Boys will be boys." Tara's expression didn't flicker. "That's the problem. You let him run wild, then wonder why he thinks rules don't apply." Bryce shrank under the weight of her words. Evans tried again, voice oily. "Let's find a middle ground here." "No middle ground," Tara snapped, her tone razor-edged. "Just consequences." Silence gripped the room. Kayla's throat tightened. She'd never seen her mom so fierce. Not just mom, but the chief. Sandra sighed, nudging Bryce. "Apologize." His jaw clenched, defiance flickering. "Mom, now," she hissed. Bryce faced Kayla, his bravado crumbling. "Sorry," he muttered, barely audible. Tara arched a brow. "Louder." His ears reddened as he ground out. "I'm sorry," eyes fixed on the floor. Kayla saw through it, empty words, no heart. But for once, Bryce wasn't in charge. Tara turned to Evans. "This isn't done. I want a report filed. If this school's been sweeping stuff under the rug, I'll dig it up." Greg's face darkened. "You're picking the wrong fight, Chief." Tara met his stare, unflinching. "So are you." She strode out, leaving the office stunned. By lunch, the school was abuzz, whispers trailing Kayla like shadows, eyes watching her every move. Some kids dodged her gaze, others stared, curious, unsure. A few nodded, quiet respect she hadn't expected. Bryce, though, simmered. She saw it when he stormed into the cafeteria, fists balled, jaw tight. His usual swagger was gone, swapped for raw fury. He wasn't taking this lying down. As Kayla passed him to grab a tray, he muttered, "Guess Mommy had to save your skin, huh?" The words hit like a jab. The room's noise dulled. She stopped cold. Kayla turned, meeting his glare. "What did you say?" Bryce stepped closer, sneer twisting his lips. "You heard me. Think this makes you hot stuff. Nobody gives a damn about you. When your mom's gone, you're nothing again." Her pulse hammered. This time, she wouldn't shrink. She squared up, chin high. "You're pissed," she said coolly. Bryce blinked, thrown. "What?" She tilted her head. "You thought you'd skate by like always. But someone finally checked you." His sneer wavered. Kayla pressed forward, voice steady. "That's why you're mad. Everyone saw it, saw you get humbled. They don't fear you now, they feel sorry for you." Bryce's face flushed, fists trembling. "Shut up," he spat. She smirked. "You shut me up." He froze, rage boiling, but no comeback ready. For once he backed off, shoving past his crew and bolting from the cafeteria. Kayla exhaled, adrenaline buzzing. Eyes lingered on her, but she stood taller now. She grabbed her tray, heart still racing. For the first time since moving here, she didn't feel invisible. She felt solid, real. As she sat, she realized Bryce's reign was cracking. He'd built his throne on intimidation, but that was done. By day's end, the shift was undeniable. Whispers still followed, stares still tracked her, but the laughter had died. Bryce's old cronies acted like he was a stranger now, keeping their distance as he sulked. Bryce kept his head low, a shadow of his former self. Kayla didn't need his sorry, not some forced mumble. She didn't need him to admit defeat. He'd lost the second Tara stormed that office, the second the school faced the truth. His grip on power was gone, and without it, he was just another face in the crowd. Kayla climbed into her mom's car that afternoon, shutting the door. Tara glanced over. "How was school?" Kayla paused, then cracked a small grin. "Not awful." Tara smirked, pulling onto the road. "Told you guys like Bryce only rule if you let them." Kayla nodded, gazing out the window. "Yeah, I see it now." Silence settled, warm and easy. Then Tara spoke again. "I didn't step in because you're weak." Kayla frowned. "Huh?" Tara kept her eyes ahead. "I did it because you're not. I just needed you to know it too." Kayla blinked, caught off guard. Tara shot her a quick look, a faint smile tugging her lips. You're tougher than you think. Kayla swallowed, staring at her hands. She'd spent so long feeling small, dodging fights, fading into the background. But today flipped that. Standing up wasn't just about pushing back, it was claiming her space. And once she did, no one could steal it. She thought of Bryce, how he'd thrived on others' silence, banking on their fear. How many times did kids like him win, because no one called it out? Because people figured it was pointless? Bullies fed on that quiet, they needed it. Strip away their leverage, refuse to flinch, and they're nothing. Kayla got it now. Tara's voice broke her thoughts. Don't let anyone box you in, Kayla. Don't let them decide what you're worth. Stand up once, and they can't knock you down again. Kayla nodded, feeling the weight of it sink in. She'd always thought fighting back meant yelling or throwing punches. But it wasn't that, it was knowing she mattered. Bryce had lost because he couldn't handle her holding her ground, because Tara wouldn't let it slide. And now neither would she. The car hummed through Summit Ridge, streetlights flickering on. Kayla exhaled, lighter than she'd felt in weeks. She wasn't the new girl anymore. She was Kayla Morgan, and that was enough. Tara turned the wheel, glancing at her again. You good? Kayla met her mom's eyes, steady now. Yeah, I'm good. The road stretched ahead, and for once, she didn't dread tomorrow. Bryce could glare, his crew could whisper. It didn't matter. They'd never push her down again. Not because she'd won some big showdown, but because she'd decided who she was. And that was a power no one could touch. In the echoing halls of Summit Ridge High, 17-year-old Kayla Morgan learned a truth that hit harder than Bryce Carter's tray crashing to the cafeteria floor, scattering fries across the tiles 20 feet wide. For weeks, she'd shrunk under his taunts, his varsity jacket looming like a storm cloud, his sneer a blade slicing her silence. She thought enduring it, headphones on, eyes down, would make it stop. It didn't. Bryce thrived on her quiet, his power swelling with every unchallenged jab. But when Chief Tara Morgan stormed in, badge gleaming under Idaho's fluorescent glare, the game flipped. Bryce's smirk dissolved as Tara's voice cut through, sharp as a 10-inch switchblade. Consequences, not excuses. Kayla saw it then. Silence wasn't strength, it was surrender. Standing tall wasn't just defiance. It was claiming her worth, a 5'4" frame against his 6-foot ego. The lesson burned deep. Bullies rule only when you let them. Strip their control, stare back, speak up, and they're nothing. By Monday's end, Bryce slunk away, a king dethroned, while Kayla walked free, no longer the outsider, but a force no one could push down. What would you do if you were Kayla, facing down Bryce's taunts in Summit Ridge High? Drop your thoughts below. Did she play it right, or should she have struck back sooner? Hit that like button if you're rooting for her comeback, comment your take, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more gripping stories and life lessons that'll keep you hooked and inspired every week.